Welcome to the Inviting Shift podcast for another episode. A little disclaimer on this one: if you are a person who menstruates or is in menopause, you'll want to tune in. For others, this may not be of interest, or you may want to listen in order to support someone you know who is approaching or is in menopause. Today's guest is Dana Lawson, and she brings this awesome energy to menopause. I'm so excited for you to tune into this conversation. She educates women on what is happening to their whole self during the menopause transition and why it's a true shift in their bodies, minds, and how they might show up. Dana teaches women to align to their health with nutrition optimization, stress reduction, quality sleep, and intentional exercise so that you can shine by having the confidence to live a happier, healthier, and balanced midlife journey. You're going to want to tune in to hear how your body and mind are shifting during menopause and perimenopause and what is actually happening so that you can invite shift into how you can better take care of yourself. And if you're like me and don't know anything about menopause, at least before this conversation, then you really need to tune in. Dana's explanation is so educational. And check out Dana's free offer for a 7-day meal plan for changing our bodies in the description. Well, welcome Dana Lawson to the Inviting Shift podcast.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited about this conversation because menopause isn't something that women talk about enough, which I think is very strange because if we're lucky enough, we get to the age where we have to all go through this thing. And yet it's so hush hush. It's not something that we necessarily talk within friends or even family about. And so Dana is going to help us unlock some of these secrets or things that we're really curious about menopause so that we can be more mindful and conscious and intentional as we're going through our lives and feel more confident, especially at this time of our lives when we might be losing other things. But Dana, tell us more about what it is that you do and how you help women.
Sure. Thank you. So, again, my name is Dana Lawson, and I'm a menopause coach. And so, my primary goal is to educate women on what's happening to their bodies during the menopause transition, and not just what's happening, but why it's happening. It seems that women are better able to accept what's happening if they know why. And then I teach them to align their health with optimal nutrition, stress reduction, quality sleep, and intentional exercise so that it can shine by having the confidence to live happier, healthier, and a more balanced midlife journey.
Beautiful. And I love that because here's the thing. I think that eating and exercising and doing all the things that we were doing in our 20s and our 30s isn't necessarily the same right things that we should be doing during our menopause area, right? During our midlife. Some of these change. And I know lots of women who are like, oh, I've gained this weight. I've been doing the same thing I've always been doing. And now all of a sudden, it's just not working anymore. And so there's all these little questions. I'd love to know, what are the questions that you get most often about menopause?
Oh, Christina, you just hit the nail on the head. Most of the time, it is surrounding weight, because that is such a drastic change for a lot of women, and it's like this slow creep weight gain that um, they don't really. It's almost imperceptible in the beginning, and it's not until you're like 20 pounds deep that you realize, oh wow, my clothes are really tight. And so I get questions about that. I also get questions about um, the irregular menstrual bleeding.
Mm.
So if your menstrual cycles are like clockwork and everything goes according to plan in your 20s and 30s, and then all of a sudden now you have really heavy periods, they're lasting a whole lot longer, or you'll skip a month or two, that becomes very scary to women. And so I get a lot of questions about that, especially if the periods are heavy and they're long, now their energy is affected, their iron is low, and it could just be a really scary experience to, have that. Well, it's called flooding,
Mm.
and it's quite embarrassing for a woman as well. And
Yeah,
then
she's not
I think,
anticipating it, right?
no, yeah,
Feel like a
no,
teenager all over again, like, "How did I
yes,
not know that my menstrual cycle was coming?" Right? But it can
yes.
be thrown off is what I'm hearing.
Thrown off and just scary. It makes a
Mhm.
woman think, well, is there something going on that's more serious?
Mm.
And then the other thing are their fatigue, and that's due partly to either not sleeping well at night or a combination of night sweats that make you wake up, throw the covers off, then you get cold, then you put the covers back on again, and that pattern of covers on, covers off all night long can really wreck your next day.
For
And
sure.
so those are the three things that I think women come to me about that they're experiencing a lot.
Yeah, beautiful, and I've experienced several of those, so I understand, especially the sweating and then the freezing and then the sweating and then the freezing, and I think you know, this is a podcast about confidence. And the reason we're talking about this is menopause can really impact our confidence. It's one thing that, maybe some of our looks aren't as young as they used to be, and the gray hair and the sagging, right? But then you throw on these hormonal changes. We've just gotten used to like the hormone changes of having our menstrual cycle and regulated that and become resilient to it. Now all of a sudden we have these changes that are even more. The gaining of the weight can really, I know, freak some of my clients out because they've always been a thin, fit person. Now all of a sudden they're still doing their HIIT training, but they're actually growing, right? And not in the way that they want to. And like you said, I think it's a slow thing, right? It's a couple
Hmm.
pounds here, a couple pounds there. And then all of a sudden, a year or 2 later, you're like, "How am I 2 sizes bigger than I was?" And that's been an impact on my life. Like, I've noticed that I can easily gain weight, especially in my gut area where it never used to stick to.
Yes, yes, definite clear sign of perimenopause. Your weight distribution is definitely in a different place, and it definitely centers around that stomach area. If you never had a belly before, you will definitely have one in perimenopause.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, well, at least I'm not alone. So tell us, what is happening in our bodies? Why are these crazy things happening?
Yeah. Well, first, the main hormone for women is estrogen. Most women are very familiar with it, but most don't know what it really does. So,
Mm.
in addition to causing us to have menstrual cycles and keeping us fertile, estrogen is the master regulator of every vital function in a woman's body,
Mm.
period. So
Mm.
we're talking about metabolism, which is the transport, the production, storage, and utilization of energy. We're also talking about keeping the blood vessels elastic and stretchy so that but blood flow can flow easily and return back to the heart. We have estrogen receptors in our brain, so it's responsible for our mood. It
Mm.
also regulates the immune function. So some women will experience, um, they'll start to have allergies that they didn't have before, or
Interesting.
sensitivities, food sensitivities that they'd never had before, because of the drop of estrogen. So when we talk about it as a hormone that creates fertility, that's only one part of the job. The major job is controlling and regulating all of our bodily functions. So when we start to lose estrogen, then we start to become moody because
Mm.
now we don't have the same balance of that hormone in our brains.
Mm.
And so we get foggy brain. We'll be forgetful, in addition to mood swings like depression, sadness, even anger. there's, you get that perimenopause anger. Also, you can experience hair growing in areas that you didn't before. And let's face it, Christina, pulling chin hairs out with tweezers is not sexy. Nobody wants that, but that
Nobody wants that.
happens. Women may go to the doctor for their annual appointment, and their blood pressure may be up. They may have problems now with being pre diabetic or in that range where you're close to being pre diabetic. That is all a result of the loss of estrogen. And that includes the heavy menstrual cycles. It's the fluctuation that's now happening because estrogen doesn't take like a cliff drop right in the beginning. It kind of sputters a little bit. So it's up some months, it's down some months, up and down. And then progesterone, which is the other hormone that balances estrogen, that just takes a slow, steady decline until after your periods end for good, which is post menopause. Then both those hormones drop, and your whole body is in disarray. And so other parts of your body try to salvage what's declining. Our body is made to be balanced, and so when that balance is lost, then other parts of the body. So now we'll have excesses in cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and perimenopause is a stressor because of the imbalance of hormones, and so we'll experience high cortisol levels, which then, when that is imbalanced, it affects our sleep. So, and then when progesterone starts to drop, progesterone is responsible for keeping us calm and zen. And so we're affected by, we may have the same stressors or similar stressors as we age, but now how we handle it is going to look differently because we don't have the protection that progesterone provides to keeping us in calm and steady moods. And I don't know one woman that's, in her 40s or 50s that doesn't have more stress. She has, her career is probably progressing. Maybe she's started having children later in life. Maybe her parents are getting older. And they're in their own home and having cars. Maybe you have kids that are going to college, and it's that whole life dynamic that now puts additional stress on top of the physiological stress that the menopause transition creates.
Yeah, there's so many changes that could be going on in a woman's life at that age as she's starting to look at trying to stop working, maybe, or, even I know a lot of women who are transitioning their careers because by the time they got to their 50s, they were like, this is no longer fitting. So, what I'm hearing is that these hormones, the estrogen and the progesterone, they're both regulators. And as they start falling down and they start coming down during our perimenopause and our menopause until postmenopause, our body is kind of out of whack. So all of the bits of us, right? All of the bits of us, especially that brain piece, I want to come back to that because that is something that goes on with me a lot. But as we're doing that, we have all these other parts of the body that are getting like hyperactive, trying to figure out, how can I regulate myself now that nobody's regulating me? And I think I'm so familiar with women in their midlife starting to have allergies to foods that they never had allergies to, or at least sensitivities to foods that they've never had sensitivities to. And these things start impacting them. And so we can't eat necessarily the same diet that we used to eat, and we have to find new ways of doing things. So those of us who walked into midlife thinking, I have a great routine in my life, I'm really healthy, I'm really happy, all of a sudden, if that changes, it could just be our menopause, and we don't even think about, like, I never even would have thought that menopause and these hormones could impact so many bits of my body. I mean, the way I was taught in 5th grade sex ed, it was what, like they're just responsible for your periods and for your menstrual cycle and yada yada. Like I didn't know that they actually did things in the rest of my body, right? So
Yeah.
this is like new information. And I love that you address the brain fog because that is something that I get. I mean, I'll even be on podcasts making a point, then all of a sudden I'm like, what was I thinking of? Like the thought just slipped right out of my brain, like somebody stole it. And so and so yeah, and that can be really frustrating. And then we're frustrated that we can't remember things. And then because of the drop of the hormones, we're also have less of an ability to regulate that frustration. Did I get all that right?
You did. You did an excellent job. It's really just a domino effect.
Yeah.
When hormones start plummeting, first it's progesterone and then estrogen does this weird up and down until it finally goes down. It's that first domino that knocks all the other ones off and knocks them down. And like you said earlier about confidence, so weight gain is one reason why a woman may feel less confident. Taking a tweezer and pulling out chin hairs is definitely making you feel less confident. Those wrinkles around your mouth, I will never forget the first time I actually started to see, deeper lines
Mm,
around my mouth. I was
uh,
like, wow, that
mine's
this is
my
how.
forehead.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can we rub those away without
Right.
Botox,
Is there an
right?
eraser?
Rub some estrogen right on there.
Actually, Christina, the estrogen cream is actually very effective on fine lines and wrinkles. So
Interesting.
just saying.
Yeah, it sounds like one solution, right, to one problem. And so
Yeah.
I'm curious, what can you recommend for women? Well, first let's ask this.
Okay.
How long is this average menopause? Because I think people have like very confused about this. Like some people think it's like a month, like you go from having a period and then you don't. And I mean, I wish it was so easy or there was a switch there, but that's not
Right.
how it goes, right?
Yeah, no, unfortunately not. And that's a really good question. So, perimenopause is that time around menopause. So, you're still having menstrual cycles, they're irregular, and you start to experience some of those other common symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, depression, weight
Weight
gain,
gain.
etc. So, that's perimenopause. And that can start in your early to mid 40s. For Black and Brown women, it starts earlier. So it can
Mhm.
start in the late 30s, early 40s.
Hmm.
And so you're in perimenopause for anywhere from 5 to 7 years, perhaps a little bit longer for other women. And then once you have your last menstrual period and you go 12 months without having a period, you are considered menopause. That's menopause when you've had that last menstrual period. It just takes 12 full months to confirm
Be
that
sure.
you're not
Mhm.
going to have any more. And then the rest of your life is postmenopause. So that can be anywhere from 51, which is the average age in the United States, to over 51, 55, 56. Some women go into their mid to late 50s.
Hmm.
Before they are postmenopausal. So I hope that
Beautiful.
answered your question.
Yeah, that gives us a better idea so that we understand this time frame. It is a little bit flexible for each woman. But what I'm hearing is it could be a good 10 to 15, maybe even 20 years of symptoms before you actually experience an entire year without a menstrual bleeding. And I've known women who have gone like 10, 11 months and then boom, it's back again, right? And
Yeah,
so it can fluctuate. Just because you've been 6 months doesn't mean that it still can't happen.
that's right. That's right. So, ladies, you can still get pregnant in perimenopause.
That would be scary at my age. So be careful.
Yes, please be careful.
Yeah, well, it does happen. We see those babies of women in their 50s, and I think it's amazing. And, I bet it was a surprise.
Unless they, intentionally,
Sure, put the pieces
put it all.
together for it. Yeah, exactly. So what is it that we can do? How do we need to shift things in our lives in order to better, be more mindful, I guess, and present with what's going on so that we don't feel like we're crazy? Because there are times where I can believe that I'm crazy because I can't think straight and my mood's weird and we all want to know, why is this happening? And I want to know, what is it that we can do about it?
Yeah. And you set it up so nicely, Christina, in the beginning of the conversation where you mentioned how we're doing all the things and, eating right, exercise, weight is good. And then all of a sudden you're still doing the same things, but now your body's not responding. So one of the things is change with your body.
Mm.
It's so important.
This podcast is supported by Christina Smith Coaching as a service to get you to have more confidence and self love. One way we do that is by bringing what we learn into our bodies by lighting up our senses. Some people call these types of exercises rituals. I think they're really alignments. Something we do each day to align with what we truly want rather than getting stuck in the default of trying to outrun what we don't. I bet you could use a little self-love ritual today, and there's a short quiz or survey to pick the best one for you. You can go to the link in the description to take the free quiz to get the self-love alignment that is right for you right now. You'll also get a download of 5 self-love rituals so you can switch it up and try one each day. Our little thank you for tuning into our podcast and into your own heart.
We think that we if we're eating well, that's and we're still eating well in perimenopause, that should work. But because your hormones have now taken a nosedive, the things that you ate in your 20s and 30s no longer are being metabolized well.
Mm.
So we do have to make that shift with our bodies. The other thing is, and this is something we all have trouble with as women, is being gentle with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We push ourselves so hard very often to make sure everybody else's needs are met. And we are usually the last person on the list. But this is a time now to really be kind and gentle, be forgiving, um, not take the changes as now there's something wrong with you. This is a natural progression, and like we said earlier, if we get here, it's a blessing. So be kind. Don't do those punishing workouts anymore. That extra hit and extra cardio, that worked fine when your estrogen was great in your 30s, but now when you're in your 40s and 50s, now we have to shift to change that exercise from, some cardio is fine, but not excessive cardio. Now we need to build our muscles. And so strength training is really the key to not only maintaining muscle mass, which helps to burn calories and fat, but also it's good for us in a mental space. It produces those great endorphins that make us feel good and make us happy. So it'll affect our mood and also help us to sleep better at night. So I think that's really an important thing. And then really get educated so that you can understand this whole process. Take away the fear and the not knowing. We're not passing generational ignorance to our daughters and other women. Now we are empowered with this information, and now we can choose how I'm going to supplement, if I'm going to use HRT or not, which is hormone replacement therapy. What are other ways that I can reduce stress in my life and, really have a great nighttime routine so I'm getting adequate sleep. And all of those things put together can really make for a smoother transition. Or if you started the transition a little bumpy, it can help smooth it out for you.
That's beautiful. I really like that. being gentle with ourselves, because I think, especially by this time, we think like we're Wonder Woman and we can do it all, especially if we have like kids that are going off to school and we're like, oh, I have this whole new life and let me just hit it real hard at work or start a side hobby or do all of these things. And I love that it's like I see it in my mind as like there's this piece that says where it's okay to give ourselves permission to really take care of
Absolutely.
ourselves, that this is something that is a real thing that our body is going through. This isn't like just everyday whatever. There's things that our body is shifting, and even though we can't see them or point to them, that's real change that's happening. And I found that, because of my brain fog, I've had to really slow myself down and okay, take a breath. What did I come in this room for? What was I about to say, right? Whatever it is. And I love that, being gentle with yourself, because I sign all of my emails, be gentle with your humanness. And it
Yes.
just reinforces that it doesn't make us weak to take care of ourselves. It actually makes us really great models for everybody else, that, oh, look, mom's taking care of herself. We think that we're Wonder Woman, that we have to kill ourselves is because our mothers did that, right? Our mothers
Yes.
worked hard and said that you have to
Yes.
work hard and everything. And they didn't have at least mine didn't have a very good model of how to really care about yourself and take care of your
Mhm.
body and your emotional state, all of it. And
Mhm.
so what an opportunity. So we can look at this as an opportunity to really tune back into our bodies as it's doing this magical thing. And I know that a lot of women have huge struggles with growing older. And I work with archetypes a lot. My podcasters will know. And I love the crone. Some people don't even like the word the crone because it literally means old hag.
Right.
But if you look it up in the dictionary, it
Yes.
actually says that. I'm like, that's awful. But she's our wise woman. Like, this is the woman who's been through experiences. I think about some tribes in Africa. When you go to visit them, the women have the most like beads around their necklace because
They're
they've
the
been
most
given a bead
decorated.
for wisdom and for celebration and everything. And they're highly respected because they've been through all that experience, because they've had to learn how to manage life and keep going and the struggles that happened. And so I really think it's a beautiful time of age. And I know that they also relate this to righteous rage. And I'm wondering how much of that righteous rage that goes with the crone is about, part of it is menopausal, like of like having this like
Definitely.
anger and frustration that things are changing,
Mhm.
and that the ease that we did things with before is might be becoming a little harder for us.
Yeah. You make a point about that. That was so beautifully put. And so accepting where we are in life is also very helpful to just accept, this is where I am, this is who I am. And that doesn't mean resolution. So it doesn't mean that you have to stay stuck with achy, creaky joints and extra weight and all of the things that make this transition uncomfortable. It just means that you're no longer going to fight your body. You're not going to fight your body.
Yes.
And loving who you are becoming, like that this wise woman that that you have overcome 100% of the bad days.
Mm,
And so this transition, you will also come off victorious. And it's all about how you shift your mind
mhm.
and accepting and loving your body. That too is really key.
Yeah. And I think so many women think about like the invisible women, that we become invisible as we get older. And I think it's double edged. I think maybe there are people who look at us less. And I think that we shrivel ourselves. We make ourselves small, right?
I
And
agree.
we're not as apt to make ourselves seen, which I think is a real shame and is connected to that confidence. So What
Yeah.
I'm learning today is that if I can learn more about how my menopause is, what's going on in my body, I can still stick with my confidence, because even though my body is changing, I've known a lot of older women that I think are amazing people. And like they have a light and a shine to them. And I think of them and I go, that's who I want to be. I don't want to be that cranky old lady down the street that's just angry at everybody, right? Chasing kids around with sticks and stuff. I want to be that bright, shining one. And I'm hearing that one way we can do that is by really tuning in and listening to what's going on in our body. And just to wrap up just to review some of the tips that you gave us, because I want listeners to really hear this. One is that we need to change with our body. And I love that you said it's about an acceptance, not settling. We're not settling for our body. What we're doing is we're accepting what's going on so that we can make more wise decisions about how we can move from here. Now that I'm in this space, how can I switch? And one of my favorite quotes is by Daniel Laporte. It says, "Radical transformation starts with the radical acceptance of what is."
Love it. Love it.
Right?
Yes. 100%.
So we
100%.
need to accept it. Menopause isn't going anywhere. We're not getting those hormones back at the same levels that we used to. And so we have to help our body, because these little helpers in our body, our estrogen and our hormones, are leaving us
Yeah.
without that extra support. So I think it's nature's way of saying, if you haven't figured out how to be gentle and take care of yourself by now, here's a good chance for you to do
Yes.
so.
If you haven't learned before, you're going to learn now.
Right, right. So, what else do you have for us today?
Well, I have a special treat. I'm really excited to be able to offer those listeners to your podcast a 7-day menopause reboot meal plan. And
Mm,
this way, it contains a low inflammatory foods, as well as it cycling carbohydrates and cycling calories, so that the body is not getting used to just one thing. It's removes many of the starchy carbs, because that was really what gives us a problem in because of our lack of estrogen. So it's really colorful. There's snacks and dessert in there as well, so you can indulge your sweet tooth, but without going off the rails. And I'm really excited to offer that to the listeners of today's podcast.
that is amazing. So, if you're lacking, or you lacking the knowledge of what do I eat now while I'm in perimenopause or in menopause, this will be a really great reference sheet that even if you don't eat all the things on that sheet, there's going to be really great ideas of how you can keep your body in alignment with what's going on for your body. So that is beautiful. If you have any questions about menopause, I'm going to be putting Dana's information around here somewhere, probably right below this podcast where you're listening to it, so that you can get in contact with her. She has really great information that might be really helpful and might even put your mind at ease. Because I got to tell you, when I first started talking to her, I was thinking, I think I'm crazy. I think I'm losing my mind, right? And you told me that too, that some people are like, do I have early Alzheimer's? What's going on? And
Yes.
it's like, no, this is actually a natural part of our body that we don't have to, but it sure would make it easier. It sure would invite the shift if we were open
Mm.
to looking at how we might have to do things differently in order to get the same results we used to get.
Mhm. I love when you said invite the shift. That's so beautiful and so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, rather than just hitting our heads on the wall going, "I don't want this to happen." I feel like I do that so much. So instead of doing that, because all it does is give us a headache and extend the pain, right? So
Yes.
one way we can invite shift is by embracing the fact that this is a really beautiful thing that your body's going through. Many of us were able to bear children because of this whole process.
That's right.
Well, not the menopause, but because we're fading out of the process of having babies. Like, this is really, really magical for women. And I think that we miss that because it's so uncomfortable, but I don't think it has to be uncomfortable. So if you're having true discomfort with menopause, I really hope that you'll reach out to Dana and ask her more, because I'm sure she's got some answers for you.
Yes,
So
I'd be
thank you
happy
so
to
much
help.
for being on today, Dana. I really, really appreciate that. Maybe we'll get a flood of questions in and you'll have to come back and answer some more.
Oh, that would be great. I would love to. Thank you so much, Christina. It's been a pleasure.
Beautiful. Hey, one more thing. When we are all more confident and full of self love, we can act more intentionally and mindfully. What would a world like that look like? I want to know. One way that you can help me with this vision is to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. It helps more than you know, and it's just a few clicks to help me create a more beautiful world. And as always, remember to be gentle with your humanness.